Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Pumped up on Mars, juice, and ketamine.
He is the Thomas Edison plus of our age.
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
I would say 98% really appreciate what he does, but those 2% that are nasty, they are out there in full force.
We are meant for great things in the United States of America, and Elon reminds us of that.
We don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, April 29th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. Okay, folks, so depending on your math, and this, I will note, is the subject of heated debate inside the Bloomberg newsroom. We're 100 days into the Trump administration, which for us here at Elon Inc. means, of course, 100 days of Doge. And so we've assembled our crack staff to unveil the good, the bad, the ugly, and the truly shocking of Musk's first 100 days in power. We have our regulars, Max Chafkin and Dana Hull. Welcome to you both.
Greetings, David. How are you?
I'm good. Dana?
Hey, David.
And we have good friend of the pod, tech reporter Kurt Wagner. Kurt, hello, sir.
Hey, how often do I have to come on to be considered a regular here? I feel like I need my title.
What do you
my
think?
title bump.
I don't know.
I feel like I'm here pretty regularly, but that's fine. I can be friend of the pod.
But if friend of the pod gets you, a certain amount of pay, and then if you move beyond that, it's a bump. We got doged around here.
All
right. We don't have the money to give you an upgrade. Later on,
all right, fair enough.
Later on, we'll kick Kurt out. So because just keeping him in the friend of pod status, we'll kick him out. Sorry, Kurt. And Dana, Max, and I will get under the hood of the vaunted Robotaxi, which is launching supposedly in June. Now, Musk spent a chunk of last week's Tesla earnings call. Remember that call? Hyping the vehicle. And so we'll dissect the new details and color emerging around a product that is a crucial driver of Tesla's stock price. All right, but first things first, Dana and Kurt, you guys have out on the Bloomberg terminal and on the World Wide Web today, a terrific piece about the 100 days of Elon Musk in power. And there were a few nuggets I want to quickly point out to people. One is that Musk has ruffled so many feathers there in Washington and inside the administration and among Republican members of Congress that he has been instructed to sit down each week with Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, to keep her informed of his comings and goings. A little bit more color on this. He got called into the penalty box. What happened?
This is reporting that was contributed by our colleague Nancy Cook in Washington. And my understanding is just that, for all of the shock and awe of the first 100 days on both the Trump administration side and the Doge side, the lack of coordination really led to a lot of consternation with the cabinet secretaries and with the staff. And, Musk is, moving fast, kind of like shoot first, ask questions later. That is the way he operates. And he kind of felt like he had carte blanche to do that from the president and was doing what he was doing to help enact the agenda. But when there's fallout, you have to kind of have a little bit more of a coordinated approach. And I think that, Susie Wiles is very much into message discipline and kind of trying to run a much more orderly White House. So, yeah, they're meeting on a more regular basis now.
Okay. And I just thought that was a great little nugget in there. And another one, Kurt, that I noticed was for every dollar that Doge says it saved for American taxpayers, the market cap of Tesla has fallen $2. Tesla's market cap now down roughly $450 billion.
Yeah, and I think what is probably not shocking to those of us here and those who are regular listeners of Elon Inc. is this idea that, Elon has quite frankly vastly overpromised and underdelivered on the Doge stuff, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago weren't we talking like $2 trillion in cuts, then $1 trillion in cuts, and now we're talking about, $100 billion in cuts or whatever it is. So I think what's somewhat, again, maybe surprising to the general public, but not to those who follow Elon closely, is this idea that he often presents a much grander, a much more successful vision than what he's able to deliver. And that's part of why he's a great salesman, but it's also part of why he is now in this predicament, is that he kind of came in and went a little too big, not really hitting those numbers. Yeah. So that's reflected in the Tesla stock.
Okay. And so let's do this now. We have a handful of categories that we have selected for you guys, and I will throw them out. In Musk and Doge's first 100 days, or let's say in Musk's first 100 days, I should say, for starters, first things first, give me his biggest victory, Kurt Wagner.
His biggest victory is going to be the impact he's had on helping get friends and allies placed throughout the government. And I'm going to focus specifically on the presumptive administrator of NASA, Jared Isaacman, who, has flown in SpaceX rockets, is sort of a supporter, both emotionally and financially, of Musk. And I think having a friend running NASA will be huge for him.
Max Chafkin.
Agree with Kurt. Jared Isaacman, as Kurt is a good friend of this pod, Jared Isaacman is a good friend of SpaceX. That's Elon's biggest win, I think, by some margin.
Wait a minute, but is Kurt being a good friend of the show, is that helping Elon?
No, I'm saying yeah. I'm not saying Kurt's going to get us a $10 billion Mars contract.
Okay. Right now.
But
don't let David come between us, Max. I got you. It's fine.
Dana Hull, what say you?
The data. It's the access to the data. It's the fact that Doge, it's not just that these Doge kids are working at these various entities. It's that Musk and the sort of Silicon Valley cabal, they have people now in CISO positions, and they have access to vast amounts of government data. This is a guy who's running an AI company. He now has access to government data.
As somebody who is kind of by nature somewhat skeptical of many developments in AI, I think I agree with everything that Dana just said. This is a potential win, both for Trump and for Elon. But I don't know. We've seen, data access does not necessarily mean, definite technology improvement. It doesn't mean that they've done anything with the data. I don't think we know for real what Elon has gotten out of this, or even, frankly, what Trump has gotten out of this. These guys are definitely going to tell a story where data is very important.
I see. Okay, moving on. Musk's biggest defeat, and there are many to pull from here. His biggest defeat in these first 100 days, Kurt Wagner.
I'm going to go with Tesla's brand destruction. Obviously, I know these things go in waves, but it's been really bad. It's the kind of thing I could take years, decades to win back.
Max Chafkin.
The poll numbers. Elon Musk went
his
poll numbers, and now because Elon Musk is a political figure, we see him all the time. He is the equivalent of a very unpopular politician, and he went from being a pretty much universally admired business guy, even when he was starting to sort of signal right wing, to being, underwater in his poll numbers. And that, that has impact on Tesla. It has impacts in, it could even impact Donald Trump. So, yeah.
Dana Hull.
Wisconsin, lost in the kind of blizzard of this first 100 days is that Musk, ventured out with his political action committee to the Badger State in support of a Republican nominee for the Supreme Court race there, and spent $20 million, ran all these ads, paid people to sign his petition, gave away money, campaigned in Green Bay, wore a cheese hat. Did all of these things to kind of really inject himself in the Wisconsin race. And what the Democratic Party in Wisconsin realized very quickly was that Trump was not on the ballot, and that they could frame this race as a referendum on Musk and Doge, which they did quite effectively. And the Democrat in that race won by 10 points. And, in the piece today, we have a great quote from Elaine Kamarck from Brookings. People hate Elon more than Trump now, and that is rallying Democrats. And if the Wisconsin race is a barometer of what's to come, I think it just really calls into question how effective Musk and his spending will be in down ballot races when Trump is not on the ballot himself.
And there's a through line here between the three things, because the collapse in Musk's popularity, gets you the brand destruction, gets you the defeat.
It's all, we're all saying the same thing. We're just pointing at different sort of data points that show what has happened. This incredible collapse in his popularity.
Okay, next category, the biggest surprise in these first 100 days. Kurt Wagner, what say you?
Well, I'm going to repeat what Dana just said, which was the Wisconsin election loss.
You're going back to Wisconsin. Okay.
I just thought so soon after the Trump victory to employ essentially the exact same playbook and get rebuked in the way that he did. I don't know. I knew people were unhappy, obviously, with Elon. I didn't know that it would be that stark this fast.
Max Chafkin.
The biggest surprise to me was the attempt to gain access to the Department of Defense's China plans. This was like a news story.
Surprising because you just thought it was such an overreach, so audacious.
It wasn't. I mean, it was clearly an overreach because Trump came out and said, no, he's not, this isn't actually happening. There were, whatever. To me, that was the kind of high point of Elon Musk's influence in Washington.
Oh, that was peak Elon.
That was it. I mean, the idea that he's going to march over to the Pentagon and despite the fact that he has these very close ties to China, that there are people within the Republican Party who are skeptical of Elon Musk because he's so close to China, that he's gonna get access to potentially classified, according to some reports which were then disputed, potentially classified information. Of course, that has implications for SpaceX. SpaceX is vying for government contracts and so on. To me, that was kind of the high point. It was stunning. Even as optimistic as I was about Elon's ability to influence Donald Trump, that even surprised me.
You didn't see that one coming. Okay, Dana Hull.
I still think that one of the most surreal moments was when Donald Trump had 5 Tesla vehicles, including a Cybertruck, on the White House lawn and kind of turned the White House into a pop-up showroom.
Totally forgot about that.
This was at the height of the backlash against Tesla, and all of these protests were going on. And instead of maybe realizing, the optics of all this are kind of bad, Musk and Trump just doubled down on the optics of the president of the United States basically rewarding his billionaire backer with a little show, fake Tesla sales thing. And it just forever cemented Tesla as a Trump brand. It was just so crazy. It was so crazy to watch. Trump is it's all computer. He's getting into the car. Meanwhile, because he's the president, he can't actually drive. To see the White House turned into that kind of a spectacle for a private business person is just unheard of.
But that is a good point, that as bad as first quarter sales were, sales to sitting U.S. presidents were way up.
But did he actually buy?
I think he did.
I don't know that he bought
Growth
a car.
was infinitesimal. It went from 0 to 1 or 2.
I want to see that car. I don't believe that there was actually a car purchase.
Not my favorite. I guess at a surprising moment, I don't know if it was a surprise, but maybe most surreal was when he was jumping up and down on stage with the chainsaw that Javier Milei gave him, and he was shouting, "Chainsaw." Which is what one does when one jumps up and down on the stage with the chainsaw in their hand. The most underreported story of the first 100 days, Kurt Wagner.
I'm going to caveat this by, I think it's partly underreported because we're still dealing with or learning about the consequences, but we're still reporting. But I think Doge's impact on all of these various agencies that regulate Musk's companies, right? So are these cuts going to benefit him tremendously down the line because the people who used to keep tabs on him and all the things that his companies do are no longer in the building? And I think we all sort of suspect that is true to an extent. To what extent, I'm not sure. We will know for a while, but I just think that's something that we're going to have to keep paying attention to.
That is a story that will have legs. Max Chafkin.
So I think this was like a blip of a news story about a potential $400 million contract for the State Department to buy Cybertrucks. People will remember this. It came and went. The Trump administration essentially backed away from it. The spreadsheet was deleted. We don't know what happened. I think people are going to continue pulling on that one. And I personally would like to know how that line item got on a spreadsheet. I think to me, it feels like the kind of news story that could come back to bite both Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Dana Hull, what is your most underreported story?
Okay, two things. First of all, it's notable that Elon Musk has not left the country since Trump became president. Typically, he is someone who travels abroad quite a bit. Like, he goes to Europe, he goes to China. He has not left the country, and I think that that's because he's just been hyper-focused on Doge, but also maybe he's, like, worried about his safety. So it's unusual for him to just be domestic for so long. But secondly, I mean, I'm going to bring up natalism over and over again because Sophie Alexander and I were very early to this story. Since inauguration, we have learned of not just one other, but two other new children in Elon Musk's family. He now has at least 14 children. Ashley St. Clair announced that she was the mother of one of his kids, and there's a whole lawsuit now about paternity and child support. And then Siobhan Zillis, who is an executive at Neuralink, also announced that they have 4 kids together. So since Trump was inaugurated, we have learned of 2 additional children.
Yeah, so if nothing else, there will be, by the end of the year, if my math is correct, we'll have 8 new members of the Musk household. Kurt Wagner, before you leave us, sir, I want to point out one other thing in the story that you guys had today, which is that, of course, coming into last week's Tesla earnings call, there was a lot of, questions and hand-wringing about, was Musk going to address the topic of his leaving government, his returning to Tesla, sí or no? And it was just there was a lot of debate swirling. In your story, you said he announced what is effectively a soft exit. Explain.
Yeah, well, he said, I'm leaving, but I will continue to work, for or with the administration 1 to 2 days per week as long as President Trump wants me to.
I'll continue to spend, a day or 2 per week on government matters for as long as the president would like me to do so, and as long as it is useful. But starting next month, I'll be allocating far more of my time to Tesla.
But if he's still going to spend 40% of his work week doing this, is he really leaving? I would say that was maybe more optics for Tesla investors, but it felt a little bit more like a performative language, perhaps.
Look, I guess it's possible he may leave, but just this morning, or maybe it was last night as we record this on Tuesday, he posted 2 pictures of himself holding a Doge badge for some reason.
Wow.
So,
what did the Doge badge say?
It said Doge father. It had a number on it.
He's the father of Doge. So that's another.
The number
in addition
was
to 2 children.
69,420, 69,420. He's got the badge. He can't leave.
Sorry.
Badge. Kurt Wagner, thank you, sir.
Yep, friend of the pod, Kurt Wagner signing off. Thanks, guys.
So in addition to Musk unveiling his grand soft exit from Doge, heading back in part to Tesla on the call last week, he talked lots and lots about the Robotaxi. Let's listen to Elon in his own words and what he had to say.
The team and I are laser focused on bringing Robotaxi to Austin in June. Unsupervised autonomy will first be solved for the Model Y in Austin. But actually, we should parse out the terms robotic taxi or robotaxi and just generally what's the Cybercab, because we've got a product called the Cybercab, and then but any Tesla, which could be an S3, X, or Y that is autonomous, is a robotic taxi or robotaxi. It's very confusing. So the vast majority of the Tesla fleet that we've made is capable of being a robotaxi or robotic taxi.
This guy's a branding genius, by the way.
Okay, I gotta say, first off is for a guy who says, I'm so excited, he doesn't sound too excited. Okay, that's my first thought. But second of all, Max, I mean, what the heck is he talking about? Seeing as I'm not that close to it, I'm confused.
So in a lot of ways, the earnings call was very similar to the earnings calls we've seen many times over the last couple of years, in the sense that you have Elon Musk attempting to spin things forward. Don't focus on the declining or stagnant sales numbers. Don't focus on the fact that the Cybertruck is disappointing. Focus on robotaxis and optimism. We saw that. But what's different now, and what really became clear to me as we watched and listened to this earnings call, is they need to launch something very soon. And when you need to launch something very soon, you need to start talking about specifics. So we're hearing some specifics there. what Musk is talking about is that the Robotaxi launch in Austin will not include the Cybercab. This was the car that they launched a year ago. It will essentially be a normal Tesla with a steering wheel, but I suppose without a driver behind the wheel, or perhaps maybe a safety driver behind the wheel.
But don't Teslas, aren't they already largely capable of driving themselves?
That is...
No, they are not. David.
I'm getting yelled at,
No,
Max.
they are not.
Well, wait a minute. So when drivers take their hands off the wheels, who is driving them?
You, the driver, are still driving the Tesla when you take your hands off the wheels. I assume I hope your eyes are still on the road. I hope your feet are ready to press the brake if necessary. And so that is... You're right, David, that Elon Musk has described...
What I guess I'm trying to get at is what is the difference between that vehicle and its technology and the one that currently, and you guys can scream and shout as much as you want, if your hands aren't on the wheels and your foot's not on the pedal you're not driving. You could be watching it, you're monitoring it, but you're not driving it.
No, dude, you are driving it, because if your hands are right there to take the wheel...
Are they? Or I don't know, are they? Or are you texting?
Well, if you're texting, then you are not using the technology appropriately.
We digress. But what is the difference, as we understand it, what is the difference between this vehicle that we shall see apparently in June and the existing one?
David, you're not going to see a new vehicle in June. What's happening in June is that Tesla is going to launch some kind of ride-hailing service with the Model Y. The Cybercab, that is the new vehicle that people have, that they unveiled in the fall, is not ready for prime time. They said that they're going to launch this service with like 10 vehicles, maybe 20 vehicles, and it's all going to be the Model Y. So that's what's so crazy.
David, the answer to your question is, so Tesla right now has something called full self-driving (supervised). Now, the full self-driving is what you're describing. The supervised is what Dan and I are bringing up, which is that you're not allowed to use it without having your eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, feet ready to take over, because it is not considered ready for that. The plan, of course, is to take away the supervised and allow these cars to operate autonomously. And as we learned during this conference call, the way they're going to do that is by essentially severely limiting where these cars are able to operate. So Elon Musk talked about that during the call. It's going to be part of Austin. And then they're going to they are frantically, as we learned, trying to fix the quote unquote edge cases. Yeah. So the kinds of things that might cause you to have to take over, they're going to try to fix those.
We have a clip of Elon talking about that as well. Let's listen to it for 1 second.
It does seem increasingly likely that there will be a localized parameter set, especially for places that have, say, very snowy weather, like say if you're in the Northeast or something. It's kind of like a human. You could be a very good driver in California, but are you going to be also a good driver in a blizzard in Manhattan? You're not going to be as good. So there is actually some value in, you can still drive, but your probability of an accident is higher. It's increasingly obvious that there's some value to having a localized set of parameters for different regions. But this is I put that in the nice-to-have category. It's not the required category.
Blizzards in New York, in the year of our Lord 2025, we get about one of those every 5 years or something.
At other points on the call, they said, the conditions are different in Boston versus Austin. I mean, it's clear they're going to create a very modestly bounded part of Austin that they, in my guess is that they have mapped it, very closely. Basically, this is the kind of thing that all of the other quote unquote autonomous vehicle companies have done as well. Because they're not actually able to deliver an autonomous vehicle, what you do is you kind of limit where you're deploying it. You put it on roads that you already know, you limit the speed, you do a bunch of things to make this thing act as if it's a fully featured autonomous vehicle, even though it isn't.
Dana, we get how many of these vehicles when they apparently roll it out in a couple months?
I mean, they said on the earnings call like 10 to 20 at first. What I want to impress upon people is I think people have this idea that all of a sudden come June, this brand new Robotaxi is going to take on Austin much in the way that like Waymo has rolled out in cities like San Francisco. And that is not happening. This is going to be a soft launch with existing Model Ys. And like there's a lot about the business model for this that we don't know. And, Elon has bet the future of the company on autonomy and AI and robotics. They don't have another cheaper car yet, so they've got to do something. And so he's going to have this event, and we'll see. And, to be fair, people who have Tesla vehicles with FSD constantly talk about how they get better. And yet, when the cameras run into the sunlight, the whole computer thing gets messed up. So, that was something that they also talked about on the call.
So it is actually exactly like Waymo. It's just like Waymo 10 years ago, what they're doing. I mean, they are doing the thing that Waymo did. They're deploying in a single city with a very small number of cars. My guess is there will be significant limitations and significant support for the vehicles so they don't screw up.
So again, just because I'm an idiot, the difference between these 10 or 20 Model Ys that they're going to be rolling out in June or whenever it is, are different than existing all the other Model Ys out there, because they know the roads. They've been given the maps of Austin, Texas. They have committed them to memory.
We don't know that for sure. No, we don't know. So as far as Elon Musk is concerned, these are the exact same cars. The only we did learn on this call they're adding a microphone on the cars. So there's going to be an additional sensor that is ostensibly to listen for sirens. The problem being that autonomous cars from other companies struggle to deal with emergency vehicles are a huge problem for autonomous vehicles.
Right.
Cruise got into a lot of trouble. It's one of the reasons Cruise ceased to exist as a driverless car company, is because they could not navigate the emergency vehicles. So police cars and ambulances. What we know for sure is that they're doing some things to augment the existing thing. And then the other difference is going to be there's apparently no one overseeing
So again, right,
the turn-by-turn
as you had said earlier,
vehicle.
what differentiates this one from the other ones is the FSD. You're essentially just
they're crossing
getting
out
rid of
the parentheses supervised.
Right, no more parentheses. It is just
although, as we learned
FSD.
on this earnings call, there is going to be some supervision. There's going to be, quote unquote, remote operators.
Yeah, we just worked through a long tail of unusual interventions. And these are really very rare, like intervention every 10,000 miles. I mean, that's a lot of driving you got to do to even find one case where that happens.
Okay, but would you have remote operators, for example?
I mean, every now and then, if a car gets stuck or something, someone will unblock it. But it's just because we are a bit conservative and tend towards more safety than even if we get stuck every now and then. We do have remote support, but it's not going to be required for safe operation. If anything, it's just required for more availability.
Anyway, it's only a couple months away, so you can just see it for yourself in a couple months in Austin.
Okay, so that was Musk and Ashok Elaswamy, who's the VP of Autopilot. Remote operators, this is a huge issue in the world of autonomous cars. And again, what Tesla is doing is basically learning all of the lessons that Waymo learned. Waymo was acting like they were about to launch driverless cars across the country, about 10 years ago. And they
haven't really made it out of San Francisco, have they?
They're in a handful of cities. There's certainly more than 10 or 20. But anyway, remote operators is a guy in a call center who's watching the car and who is prepared to help take over if something goes wrong.
Wait.
This is going on.
Does each person in the call center, presumably they're monitoring more than one car at a time? Otherwise,
you really?
I don't know.
With 10 or 20, you probably could have 10 or 20 guys. Remember the autonomy event where you had people voicing Optimus?
Yes.
I assume.
No, that's fine. But for Waymo, Jesus, Waymo's literally got eyes on every vehicle.
This is a hugely controversial issue, and the companies are...
The whole thing's a hoax, then.
Dude, I have been writing stories about this, pointing out the issues for years,
I'm not paying
and
attention.
no one listened. Anyway, this has been a huge issue in industry. There are people in call centers monitoring the cars for Waymo and all the other driverless car companies. Now, the driverless car companies are push back on the idea that these are remote operators. What they say is, no, they're there to kind of get the car unstuck or tell it what to do. But it's very hard to know how much control those operators have. Some of the reporting that I've done over the years suggests that at least with other companies, these remote operators have been able to literally control the car remotely. So anyway, there are all sorts of issues. Based on this answer, It was very vague, but my guess is that there are remote operators who are monitoring these cars more or less continuously while they're operating. And again, this is my guess based on reporting I've done on the industry and the technology and so on.
This is how these things tend to work.
This is one of the reasons they're only launching 10 to 20.
All right, Dana, when that cybercab comes out, if it does at some point, what exactly then does that look like, and just how different is that than this?
Well, the Cybercab is what Musk unveiled in the fall, and it's sort of like a gold-tinged vehicle that probably doesn't have a steering wheel. It is a dedicated robotaxi. So I think what we have to remember is, in Musk's mind, there is the dedicated Cybercab, but that also what they're trying to tell you is that, like, anyone who owns a Model Y could eventually, like, let their car be part of this, like, autonomous Tesla fleet. And so they're trying to do both things, where create a dedicated vehicle, but also allow their current vehicles to eventually be autonomous.
That Cybercab, I think it should be regarded kind of as a demonstration vehicle rather than anything that... I mean, you know, I'm sure Musk is going to produce a few because it would be very embarrassing to not. But, like, there are just some practical issues. It only has 2 seats, you know, like, especially a guy with a big family like Elon Musk. You might think you might want a few more seats. You know, 2 seats is not very many. It's like if you have 3 friends, you need 2 Cybercabs, I guess. So I don't, it doesn't seem like a fully baked technology, to say the least.
Okay. Dana, Max, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact checks. Our editor is Anna Masarakis, and our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks, as always, to our supporters Joel Weber and Brad Stone. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.